To all the skeptics in the comments, I promise this is my actual biological voice you're hearing, not an AI, it's 100% organic. I haven't had a firmware update in years. Once upon a time, in a land before battle passes and live service nightmares, Blizzard was the undisputed king of the Nerd Hill. If you saw that blue logo on a box, you knew you weren't just buying a game, you were buying a lifestyle. This was the golden age, a time when Blizzard was the Harvard of gaming. If Harvard was run by guys who spent more time debating the lore of a space orc than their own 41s. Back then, soon wasn't a corporate excuse for a delayed roadmap. It was a promise that the developers were actually polishing the game until it shone like a diamond. Think back to the original StarCraft. It wasn't just a strategy game, it was a South Korean national sport. It was so balanced, it made the US Constitution look like a rough draft. Then you had Diablo 2, a game that turned clicking a mouse into a religious experience. We didn't mind the carpal tunnel because we were hunting for a shako. The developers were treated like rock stars, and for good reason. They were craftsmen. They released hits back when an expansion pack meant you got an entirely new game's worth of content for $30, not a $20 skin for a horse that looks like it was dipped in glitter. The tragedy of this era is that it set the bar so high that the subsequent fall didn't just hurt, it created a sonic boom of disappointment. We were all living in a state of blissful denial, thinking Blizzard was a gamer's first company. In reality, they were just a studio that hadn't yet realized they could sell us the color orange for $15. We looked at Mike Morhaime like he was our cool uncle, who let us stay up late, never suspecting that eventually the uncle would sell the house to a guy who charges for bathroom breaks. This was the peak, the summit, the high watermark of quality. And as we all know, when you're at the top of the mountain, there's nowhere to go but down into the jagged rocks of corporate greed. Then came 2004, the year Blizzard decided that instead of just selling us games, they would simply own our lives. Enter World of Warcraft. This wasn't just a game, it was a socially acceptable way to stop showering. Blizzard successfully turned millions of productive members of society into digital shut-ins who would prioritize a dragon raid over their sister's wedding or, basic sunlight. It was the birth of Warcrack, and let's be honest, the nickname was earned. The brilliance and the cruelty of World of Warcraft was the treadmill. You'd spend 3 months getting the best gear in the world, only for Blizzard to release a patch that made your legendary sword as useful as a butter knife. And did we quit? No. We thanked them for the privilege and kept running. It was the first time we saw the Blizzard polish used to mask a predatory gameplay loop. They figured out that if you give a nerd a purple item name, they'll ignore their mounting debt and the fact that they haven't seen a vegetable in 3 weeks. This was the era where Blizzard became too big to fail. They had 12 million subscribers paying $15 a month. Do the math. That's buying a private island shaped like a Murloc money. But this success was a double-edged sword. It taught the suits that players would tolerate almost anything if the dopamine hit was strong enough. We weren't customers anymore, we were monthly active users. We were data points on a spreadsheet. While we were arguing about whether the Alliance or the Horde was better, the bean counters were realizing that they didn't actually need to make new games anymore, they just needed to keep us on the treadmill. It was a beautiful, addictive, ruinous era that proved if you give people a chat room and some loot, they'll happily watch their real lives wither away. In 2008, the gaming world witnessed the most cursed union since Henry V decided to try out Tinder. Blizzard married Activision. At the time, we tried to be optimistic. We thought, oh, it's just a merger. Blizzard will provide the soul, and Activision will provide the scale. It was like watching a boutique organic bakery merge with a chemical weapons plant and hoping the bread would just stay fresh longer. Spoiler alert, the bread started tasting like sarin gas and microtransactions. Bobby Kotick, a man who looks like he feeds on the tears of unpaid interns and the dreams of orphans, entered the chat. This was the moment the Blizzard magic began to curdle. Activision didn't want art, they wanted a Call of Duty release schedule for everything. They looked at Blizzard's meticulous development process and saw wasted time. They wanted monetization pillars. Suddenly, the guys who made Diablo were being told by guys in $5,000 suits that the game needed more recurrent consumer spending. This merger was the beginning of the end for the old guard. One by one, the original visionaries started jumping ship, probably using their golden parachutes to land as far away from Irvine as possible. The culture shifted from "is this fun" to "is this maximizing shareholder value?" It was the death of the soon philosophy. Now things had to be out by Q4, ready or not, finished or broken. We watched as our favorite developer was slowly assimilated into the Activision Borg, losing its identity until the only thing left of Blizzard was the logo and a lingering sense of betrayal. It wasn't a merger, it was a hostile takeover of our childhoods. If you want to see a multi-billion-dollar company commit public seppuku with a smile on its face, look no further than the 2018 BlizzCon reveal of Diablo Immortal. Imagine the scene. Thousands of die-hard PC gamers have paid hundreds of dollars to fly to California expecting the announcement of Diablo 4. The lights go down, the music swells, and out comes a developer to announce a mobile game, developed by a Chinese outsourcing firm. The silence in the room was so thick, you could have carved it with a butcher's cleaver. When a fan famously asked if this was an out-of-season April Fool's joke, the developer responded with the legendary, "Do you guys not have phones?" It was the ultimate read-the-room failure. It's like promising your kid a pony for Christmas, building up the hype for months, and then handing them a Polaroid of a pony that costs $5 every time they want to look at it. This wasn't just a bad product announcement, it was a mask-off moment. It proved that Blizzard was no longer making games for the people in that room. They were making games for the global mobile market, which is corporate speak for whales with gambling addictions. It showed a profound contempt for their core audience. They thought they could just slap the Diablo name on a reskin Chinese gacha game and we'd all cheer because we're fans. This was the moment the Blizzard brand officially lost its prestige and became just another shovelware peddler, proving that the only thing they were developing at that point was a way to reach into your pocket while you were in the bathroom. If the phone's moment was a PR disaster, the next few years were a moral apocalypse. First, we had the Blitzchung incident where Blizzard banned a professional Hearthstone player for supporting Hong Kong pro-democracy protests. Suddenly, Blizzard's core value of every voice matters came with a giant asterisk that read, "Unless that voice upsets the Chinese government and threatens our quarterly projections." They tried to play global politics and ended up tripping over their own shoelaces, proving their integrity was worth exactly as much as a common Hearthstone card. But wait, there's more. While they were busy being corporate shills abroad, things were even worse at home. The Cubicle Farm horror show broke loose in the form of massive lawsuits, alleging a corporate culture so toxic it makes a Chernobyl basement look like a day spa. We're talking Cosby Swait's harassment and a frat boy atmosphere that was less creative studio and more low-rent 1980s stockbroker firm. Suddenly, those wholesome developer vlogs we used to watch felt like hostage videos. Every time a dev smiled at the camera, you found yourself looking for a blink code for "help me." The Blizzard magic wasn't fueled by passion, it was apparently fueled by a culture of systemic abuse and bro-culture entitlement. This wasn't just a bad look, it was a total collapse of the company's identity. You couldn't even enjoy the games anymore without feeling like you needed a Silkwood shower afterward. They didn't just burn their reputation, they salted the earth, so nothing decent could grow there for a decade. And here we are today in the era of the sequel that wasn't, Overwatch 2, and the emotional rollercoaster Diablo 4. Overwatch 2 was the gaming equivalent of a new look sticker on a box of stale cereal. They literally killed the first game just to force you into a shop where a single skin costs as much as a steak dinner. Meanwhile, Diablo 4 launched looking great, only for the devs to spend months patching it to ensure fun was strictly prohibited. It's the only game where the developers treat player enjoyment like a bug that needs to be hotfixed out of existence. Then came the bailout. Microsoft bought the whole burning wreckage for $69 billion. It wasn't a merger, as much as it was Microsoft wandering into a hazmat site and saying, "I can probably use some of these IP parts to build a Game Pass subscriber base." Blizzard now exists as a ghost of its former self, a brand name being worn like a skin suit by a giant tech conglomerate. When you buy a Blizzard game now, you're not buying a work of art from a group of dedicated nerds in Irvine. You're buying a quarterly earnings report with a 3D rendered orc on the cover. The logos are the same, the characters are the same, but the soul has been exported to a spreadsheet in Redmond. It's a tragic end to a legendary story, a cautionary tale of what happens when you decide that the insurance money is worth more than the house you spent 30 years building. But hey, that's just my take. What do you guys think? Is Blizzard actually making a comeback under Microsoft, or are we just waiting for the Diablo 5, the search for more money mobile reveal? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the dumpster fires of the gaming industry. Peace.